Chapter 2038, Return. 2. Ling Yan didn't enter Yi Qingtang's room and was instead forced back into his room. The little azure dragon looked calmly at him being thrown back into his room. "You'll be beaten to death one day," it said coldly. Ling Yan looked at it without saying a word. The little azure dragon continued, "Yi Qingtang is never going to want to see your face again if she finds out what you have planned." "It'll change my face then," he said with a smile. The little azure dragon could feel a headache coming on. "Ling Yan, I really can't read you at all. I come from the Azure Dragon clan and can be considered rather intelligent, which is why I've been able to predict your plans up to 3 steps ahead. But beyond that, I really have no idea what you're planning." Ling Yan took off his coat and leaned lazily on his chair. He rested his face on one hand and gazed at the perplexed little azure dragon. "You'll understand when it happens. Yi Qingtang went to find me and brought him to the Hall of Gloom to show him the vessel. All that was left was to take the rest of the fragments from the ancient Yu clan. She gave him a suggestion. The ancient Yu clan has been sending the youths to gather the fragments. I managed to obtain a few from the space rings after defeating them previously. Since this is the case, why not just defeat all their forces so we can gather the fragments more quickly?" Yi Qingtang said, pretending to be serious. But she had her own motives for doing this. She had to determine little Yu Yun's location and find Yu Qiong. Her conversation with him had been cut off the last time they talked and she felt extremely uneasy about it. But he had not told her his location, so she had no way of rescuing him quickly even if she wanted to. It would be faster to destroy the ancient Yu clan's forces to look for him rather than look around aimlessly. Since the Crimson League's goal was to obtain all the fragments, they naturally had no issue with her suggestion. The Crimson League and Temple of Shadows quickly joined forces to attack the ancient Yu clan. The ancient Yu clan had been on the rise previously and had been arrogantly flaunting their might, which had led to the location of their forces being revealed. Riding on Ming Di, Yi Qingtang swept away the ancient Yu clan's forces along with the Crimson League. Like this, the situation on the central mainland was quickly reversed. Those who had chosen to follow the ancient Yu clan because of their might were all suffering now. They had been the loyal dogs of the ancient Yu clan and had wreaked much havoc for them. But now the ancient Yu clan couldn't even protect themselves, let alone them. But as they got rid of the ancient Yu clan's forces, Yi Qingtang realized that they had been hiding their forces. Even after defeating many of their strongholds, they had yet to come across important people. They had not encountered many of the youths as well. The ancient clans all cheered as they saw the ancient Yu clan's forces fall one by one. They were extremely grateful to Yi Qingtang and the Temple of Shadows. But Yi Qingtang couldn't be happy at all. She still had no idea where Yu Qiong was, and Ning Luo hadn't been able to sense Yu Yun at the locations they had been as well. Even though she was the one who had started this, it was beginning to feel like a losing battle. But this was all interrupted by Yu Qiong's new information. "Holy Lord." A voice suddenly rang out of the voice transmission stone which had been silent for half a month. Chapter 2039, Return. 3. Yu Qiong sounded extremely tired and weak, but Yi Qingtang was relieved to hear his voice. "What happened to you?" she asked. A bitter laugh came from the voice transmission stone. "I'm not going to die so easily." "What happened that day?" she asked. Yu Qiong explained everything that happened that day to her. On that day, the clan master was extremely unhappy with Elder Mo. Even though he had not said it out loud, his attitude made it obvious. It was no surprise that Elder Mo had been in an even worse mood. The problem with the Crimson League had started from him. Even though they all thought that the Crimson League was merely using that as an excuse, Elder Mo was the one who had given them the opportunity to do so after all. There was no way he could argue back at them, so he could only vent his anger on Yu Qiong. Since Yu Qiong was the one who had informed him of the situation, Elder Mo had beaten him up severely before leaving. While Elder Mo wasn't going to kill him, he wasn't going to let him go as well. He planned to let Yu Qiong take the fall for all his problems. Fortunately, he didn't have to worry for his life until he came back. "Where are you now?" "Don't worry, I will be sure to save you." Yi Qingtang breathed a sigh of relief after learning that his life wasn't in danger. Yu Qiong was stunned for a moment before saying, I was brought with them to a certain place. It seems to be at the Winter Canyon in the West region, and they seem to be converging with the other forces here. They will be here for another 2 days, the Winter Canyon? Yi Qingtang frowned slowly. The Winter Canyon was in a rather remote place, and legends stated that great demons were once stationed there. Humans rarely approached the place. The ancient Yu clan's power was mostly concentrated in the east. If Yu Qiong had not informed her of this, she would never have thought that they still had power in the west. All right. Please hang in there. I will be sure to save you, she said. There was some commotion on Yu Qiong's side, and their connection was suddenly cut off. Since she had just received this critical information, Yi Qingtang prepared to leave soon after. In the Winter Canyon, the ancient Yu clan troops had set up camp under flickering flames. Yu Qiong was locked up in a huge metal cage and looked extremely frail. His entire body was covered in wounds, and he seemed to be on his last legs. Putting away the voice transmission stone carefully, he lay on the cold ground without moving. His gaze trailed silently towards the cage by his side. The cage was stuffed full of bloody bodies. They were all demon cubs. Their pelts had all been stripped off, and their raw skin was exposed to the cold, cruel air. Just a light touch brought them great pain. But the cubs, whose voices were long hoarse from shouting, were already numb to all of this. They were covered in a layer of powder which helped stop their bleeding and allowed them to breathe. Yu Qiong had been kept with them these few days, and all he smelled was blood mixed in with medicine. He had personally witnessed these cubs being skinned alive before they were thrown into the cells. Those poor, naive cubs could only stare at their pelts in fear. Chapter 2040, Return, 4. Having grown up in the ancient Yu clan, Yu Qiong was no stranger to their ways. But now that he was witnessing this from the other side, he was completely horrified at their methods. He couldn't help but think of what Yi Qingtang had said. She had said that she was going to rescue him. How laughable. He was her pawn after all, and had lost all use after being discarded by the ancient Yu clan. She would be mad to come and save this useless pawn. Having witnessed so much of the ancient Yu clan's cruel methods, he felt that her words were just to comfort her alone. Bring them out. A few ancient Yu clan soldiers walked in and grabbed a few bloody cubs from the cage. The demon cubs started struggling in a frenzy as they dug their blood-stained claws into the ground, but were still dragged out by force. Long claw marks dragged behind them on the ground. A few cubs would be dragged off each day, and those who left never returned. Yu Qiong stood up and saw the cubs being brought over to the campfire, where Elder Mo forced glowing orbs down their throats. The light illuminated them from the inside. After that, the cubs were thrown to the ground, where they struggled in pain as though they were about to die. They twitched on the ground for a long time as the light enveloped their body. Several youths from the ancient Yu clan came out from the tents. Their eyes shone silver as they gazed at the glowing cubs hungrily, and they pounced on them as though they were food. Yu Qiong could hear as clear as day the anguished cries of the demon cubs. They could only look on as their flesh was torn from their bodies by the youths right in front of their eyes, and they were eaten alive. The youths looked like feral beasts. And the demon cubs were alive throughout the entire ordeal. They were devoured until all that remained was blood-stained bones, which were thrown into the huge pot on the fire to be made into soup, which the ancient Yu clan people drank as they chatted around the campfire. Yu Qiong felt extremely nauseous when he saw this. Fortunately for him, Elder Mo hated him. The most he did was search for him on some days, and he had never shared the demon bone soup before. He could tell that the soup was precious, and ordinary members of the clan were only spared a scarce amount. How deplorable. He looked at the cage full of demon cubs. Seeing their own kind being devoured alive for them was just like looking into their future. They were all just waiting to suffer the same fate. Some of them had already gone mad from the fear, but no one cared whether they were sane or not. They only cared for their flesh. It was only now that Yu Qiong realized why the ancient Yu clan had been capturing so many demon cubs. He had been cruelly awoken to reality after many days of not knowing the truth. Lifting his eyes once again, it was only to be greeted by the furious face of Elder Mo, who was looking at him. He had a whip in his hands. It was stained with blood that Yu Qiong knew belonged to him. Chapter 2041, Slaughter. 1. Elder Mo whipped Yu Qiong harshly with the whip but was unhappy when he showed no reaction at all. I allowed you back into the ancient Yu clan that day after seeing how pitiful you were. I didn't expect you to bring such misfortune. Elder Mo gazed at Yu Qiong's bloodied face. He had no idea what he used to look like. Yu Qiong didn't stir at all. Elder Mo was not about to let him go this easily and was about to whip him again when there was a commotion from within the camp. Furrowing his brows, he abandoned Yu Qiong to go check out the situation. He froze when he saw the scene. The great Ming Di soared in the sky with a figure on his head. Behind him were over 10 flying mounts, and behind those were a group of alien race figures. What's happening? Elder Mo looked at the silhouette in the sky with widened eyes as a sense of foreboding overtook him. Likewise, the other members of the ancient Yu clan ran out of the camp. The 2 elders and wardens with Elder Mo ran out as well. The Holy Lord of Shadows, what is she doing here? Elder Mo's eyes were filled with shock. The road to the west region that the ancient Yu clan had taken was extremely obscure. Only the elders and those higher knew of it, and anyone outside did not know the path. Elder Mo, we meet again. Yi Qingtang looked down at him as she stood against the wind. Elder Mo's face was extremely dark. Holy Lord of Shadows, don't be too arrogant. You're just riding the coattails of the Crimson League, he snapped. That's right. So what? Her mouth under the mask curved slightly. Elder Mo was inflamed by her words. He had never met a more shameless person. Elder Mo, surrender if you don't wish to die, and hand over all the fragments of the spirit of chaos you have on hand. Maybe then I'll consider sparing your lives, Yi Qingtang said. In your dreams. Elder Mo said with a cold laugh, but he was internally calculating the difference in strength between them. They had 3 troops as well as over 100 powerful youths with them right now. If they just went by numbers, Yi Qingtang's side did not hold any advantage. Perhaps they had a chance after all. I guess you're choosing the hard way then, she said as she raised a hand, signaling for the Crimson League to attack. Kill them all. Elder Mo ordered. Both sides clashed in an instant. The number of ancient Yu clan youths and alien race people that Yi Qingtang had brought numbered roughly the same, and they began fighting with each other. But the ancient Yu clan had thousands of other people on their side who rushed towards the battle as well. Narrowing her eyes, Yi Qingtang gestured for Ming Di to rush forward with the flying mounts. A dragon's roar tore through the sky. Ming Di flew downwards as he breathed hot air on all of them. The heat wave incinerated anyone who came in contact with it. The elders and warden rushed into the battle as well. They brought with them 2 youths as they rushed towards Yi Qingtang. She leaped off Ming Di as he swiped his tail at the 2 approaching youths. Chapter 2042, Slaughter. 2. Yi Qingtang turned into a ray of light and black flames appeared in her palms the moment she hit the ground. Within seconds the flames turned into a black sword. She swung it around the head of an ancient Yu clan warden and he collapsed to the ground. Holy Lord of Shadows, well, fight to the death with you. Elder Mo roared as he raised his hands at her. Quickly dodging Hao blow, she hid her surprise. To think that his power was already at the Paragon 5th Heavenly Venerate level? She had her own plans and didn't want to face off with Elder Mo right now. She flew over him and sliced another warden in 2. An uneasy feeling grew from within as Elder Mo saw 2 people dying right in front of him. The Holy Lord of Shadows' power had long surpassed the Holy Venerate level. Even if the elders worked together to fight her, it would be difficult. He had struck out in anger just now, but now that he had calmed down, he was fearful of her powers. Little did they know that Yi Qingtang's current power was 3 levels lower than Elder Mo's. But just her reputation was enough to make them hesitate. On the other side of the battle, the two youths couldn't hold out against Ming Di for long and were quickly squashed into meat pancakes. Ming Di quickly flew over to Yi Qingtang, imposing as a mountain behind her. His shadow gave Elder Mo and the rest of them a great sense of oppression. I can give all of you one chance. Yi Qingtang withdrew her flames and stared at the ashen-faced elders. I'll spare you if you can defeat Ming Di, she said lightly. They rejoiced when they heard that. Even though it was said that Ming Di's strength was as great as the Holy Lord of Shadows, the pressure that the Holy Lord gave them was far greater. Yi Qingtang's words gave them a ray of hope. Even though they couldn't defeat the Holy Lord of Shadows, they might have a chance against Ming Di. They might stand a chance at winning. Yi Qingtang secretly sighed with relief as she saw their reactions. She could probably defeat Elder Mo if she used all her strength, but there was no way she could win against all of the elders. After all, she wasn't the real Holy Lord of Shadows. But Ming Di was the real thing. She didn't want to fight in front of so many alien race people from the Crimson League in case they saw through her. Furthermore, if Ming Di realized that she was a fake, she would be doomed. Stop wasting time. Make sure to attack all at once. Ming Di said, his blood boiling. Ever since the Crimson League joined them, he had had to divide his kills with them. Over the past few battles, he hadn't been able to kill to his satisfaction at all. He was going to kill as many as he liked today. Elder Mo and the rest looked at each other and all rushed towards Ming Di. With an almighty roar, Ming Di turned to face them. The skies and earth were torn apart as the shockwaves rippled through the area. The entire canyon shook as boulders shattered and fell from the cliffs. Chapter 2043, Slaughter, 3, Roar after roar erupted from the canyon. Yu Qiong picked himself up pathetically in the cage and gripped the bars tightly as he looked towards the battle. How? His eyes widened as he looked at the fight and the golden-masked Yi Qingtang in surprise. She had really come. Why would she do that for someone as useless as he was? It was true he had never believed she would fulfill her words. He had never confessed that he betrayed the ancient Yu clan as well since he knew what they did to traitors. That would definitely be 100 times more painful than this. In fact, he had already prepared himself for death and never thought that. Her arrival had caused him to completely challenge his outlook on the world. No one in the ancient Yu clan would ever care for a worthless scrap like him. A smile suddenly appeared on tortured lips, then he started laughing even as it tore at the wound on his face. Back on the battlefield, Elder Mo and the rest were no match for Ming Di at all. Even though they had been cultivated by the spiritual abode, they were unable to ascend too many realms due to their own bodies. They weren't even as strong as the youths. Wasting no time, Ming Di quickly stomped one of the elders to death while another elder was already on the verge of death. One of Elder Mo's feet was already broken by Ming Di's tail and he lay on the ground in a pathetic heap. Just as Ming Di was about to finish him off, Yi Qingtang stopped him. Spare him. I need him. Even though Ming Di wasn't pleased to hear this, he realized that the battle between the alien races and the youths was not over, so he quickly plunged into the fight to vent his insatiable need to kill. Elder Mo was at a complete and utter loss and could only watch as Yi Qingtang walked towards him. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw one of the elders draw his last breath. He could feel a sense of fear that he had never felt before engulf him. Holy Lord. Please. Please don't kill me. He threw away all his pride as a clan elder in the face of death and started begging for his life. Where is Yu Qiong? She asked. Elder Mo froze, not knowing how she knew Yu Qiong. He's in the cages at the camp. He didn't dare to mess around and quickly pointed to the tent where Yu Qiong was. Yi Qingtang glanced at where he pointed, grabbed him by the head, and flew over to the tent. The stench of blood and medicine assaulted her the moment she entered, causing her to frown. Her eyes swept over the area and what she saw made her blood freeze. A group of skinned demon cubs lay trembling in a dark cage, blood running all over the floor as the stench of blood filled the air. It was a scene from the depths of hell. The humble Yu Qiong greets the Holy Lord. A feeble voice entered her ears and brought her back to reality. She turned to look in the direction of the voice and saw a blood-covered Yu Qiong kneeling on the ground, greeting her. The humble Yu Qiong greets the Holy Lord. Elder Mo glared at him furiously as he heard those words. You. So you were working under the Holy Lord of Shadows. You were the one who betrayed the ancient Yu clan. Chapter 2044, Spiritual Abode. Yu Qiong looked calmly at the seething Elder Mo. Elder Mo shivered when Yu Qiong looked at him, as everything that didn't add up previously flooded into his mind. Hadn't they robbed the Temple of Shadows based on his information? And after that, he was the one who had volunteered to go to the Temple of Shadows to beg the Crimson League for mercy as well. So the Holy Lord of Shadows had been orchestrating this from behind the shadows all this time. Yu Qiong, you! Elder Mo yelled. He hadn't expected a dog he had kept by his side to bite him. But he was stomped to the ground by Yu Qingtang before he could keep cursing at him. What's wrong with him being loyal to me? She looked coldly at Elder Mo on the ground, who was sweating coldly. After all, his life was in her hands right now and he didn't dare complain anymore. He could only lower his head silently. She ignored him. He was only being left alive so that she could question him. She broke the lock with her hands and handed several healing elixirs to Yu Qiong. Taking the elixirs, he was finally able to calm himself slightly. Yu Qingtang looked at the terrified demon cubs. Even though she had already heard of their plight from Yu Qiong, it was still difficult for her to see it herself. Without saying a word, she freed them all from their cell. The demon cubs were all scared out of their wits. During this time, they had seen the human race kill their parents, eat their friends and skin them alive. Their fear towards the human race had reached a peak. They couldn't suppress the fear in their hearts even though they were facing Yu Qingtang. But they were rather dependent on Yu Qiong, who had shared some of his food with them out of pity. Stay here and take care of them, Yu Qingtang said as she handed more medicine to him. He took the medication from her. She looked at his battered face, which was barely recognizable. She had originally planned to make him a mask after bringing him back to the temple so that me would not recognize him. After all, she had killed him right in front of me. But it seemed that that wouldn't be necessary anymore. Ming Di and the rest had already completely wiped out the ancient Yu clan youths when she left the camp, so she threw Elder Mo over to him to monitor. She then asked them to take away their space rings and look for other items they could take. Soon enough, there were people reporting to her about a unique item in one of the tents. They wanted her to look at it as they were unsure of what it was. She noticed that Elder Mo's expression changed when they pointed to the tent. Was it something important? She immediately headed over. In the tent was a huge fire tripod. Rays of light were shining through it. It felt extremely familiar to her but she couldn't quite place it. What is this? She asked Elder Mo frostily. Chapter 2045, Spiritual Abode, 2, that's, Elder Mo was acting strange and his eyes were darting around. Yi Qingtang's eyes narrowed and she gave Ming Di a look. He raised one claw and pierced it through Elder Mo's shoulder. Elder Mo screamed terribly as he turned pale and started trembling from the pain. The next thing I pierce through is going to be your heart if you don't reply, Yi Qingtang said. Elder Mo panted and he didn't dare keep anything from them. That's, the spiritual abode, Yi Qingtang frowned as she heard those two words. What do you mean? She forced herself to stay calm as she asked him. Terrified of being killed by Ming Di, Elder Mo spilled everything. A while ago, we brought back a girl from the first mainland. She had a spiritual abode and my clan master knew that that would help to raise our power, so he let her cultivate her spiritual abode for us to absorb, and it wasn't just for the spiritual abode itself. They realized they could achieve even better effects if they cultivated themselves under the influence of the spiritual abode. That girl was extremely important to the ancient Yu clan and they didn't want anyone else to know her whereabouts, which was why they hid her in a secret location in the west region. No one other than the clan master and a few elders knew her location. The power from the spiritual abode that the little girl had cultivated was placed in a special fire tripod and sent to various groups of the ancient Yu clan for them to cultivate their strength. And what about the demon cubs? She asked. Elder Mo didn't dare hide any information from them and said, while the power of the spiritual abode is great and could help us strengthen ourselves, it brought great risks as well. The demon cubs are much stronger than us, so we use them as a vessel to transfer power. We get them to absorb the power first before we eat their flesh. The power of the spiritual abode became a lot gentler after being refined in the demon cubs' bodies, and the ancient Yu clan members didn't have to worry about exploding. Once they had come under the influence of the gentler spiritual abode power, they could then head to where the spiritual abode was to cultivate themselves for maximum efficacy. Of course, the absorption of power was dependent on age and talent as well. The amount of power that Elder Mo and the other elders, who were already rather old, was a lot less than the youths. They had skinned the demon cubs so that they could absorb the spiritual abode better. All this was just to strengthen the ancient Yu clan. Everyone else were victims. Yi Qingtang took a deep breath. What Elder Mo had said wasn't far from what she had guessed, but hearing it from his mouth still made her shudder. "Where is that girl?" she finally asked after regaining her composure. She just wanted to know where little Yu Yun was. "At the edge of the west region." I've never been there. "This is my first time here," Elder Mo said carefully. There were many elders in the ancient Yu clan, and Elder Mo was not one of the more important ones. It was only because the other elders were busy cultivating at the spiritual abode that he was left in charge of the main forces. Chapter 2046, Spiritual Abode, 3, Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes as Ming Di prepared to attack again. Elder Mo quickly spoke up, "But I have a map. I can give it to you." He took out the map hurriedly and handed it over to her. She glanced at it and called Yu Qiong over to check for anything amiss. "This is a map that the ancient Yu clan uses. There shouldn't be anything wrong with it," he said. It was only then that Yi Qingtang could relax. She memorized the map and handed it over to one of the alien race people. "Bring this back to the temple and hand it to me. Tell him that if nothing is wrong, the main forces of the ancient Yu clan should be here. He should hurry over there with his men if he wants the rest of the spirit of chaos fragments," she said. The alien race person took the map and looked apprehensively at her. "Shouldn't she be telling me this personally?" Yu Qiong was curious as well. "Holy Lord, you can't be thinking," she nodded slightly. She had to check this place out. Fortunately, she had brought Ning Luo along this time, even though his principle had not changed. He only wanted to find Yu Yun, and all other matters were inconsequential to him, which was why he would not lift a finger in battle. So she would leave soon with Ning Luo to check whether little Yu Yun was there. The place was shrouded in secrecy and no one knew what happened there. If little Yu Yun was truly there, she had to prevent them from secretly moving her once another battle started. It was going to be difficult to find her if they moved her again. So she wanted to confirm the location and find little Yu Yun as soon as possible. Once she had given all the orders, she was about to leave with Ning Luo when Yu Qiong spoke up. "Holy Lord, please allow me to go with you." Yi Qingtang froze as she looked at the injured Yu Qiong. A strange look flashed past her eyes. Yu Qiong said, "I'm a member of the ancient Yu clan after all. If you trust me, it will be more convenient if you bring me along." In the past, he had been someone who would do anything to save his own skin, but he had a change of heart after being rescued by Yi Qingtang. He used to think that the saying, "a gentleman would die for his greatest friend," was a joke, but he was finally experiencing it today. "But you're hurt," she was worried, but not about his betrayal. "That's not an issue. This is just a flesh wound and I'm feeling much better after using your medication." After thinking about it for a moment, she nodded. Elder Mo wanted nothing more than for them to forget his presence, but Yi Qingtang handed Yu Qiong a sword after thinking about something. He immediately understood her intentions. Elder Mo had exhausted his use here. Yu Qiong, please don't kill me," he pleaded desperately as he started to panic. He would never have imagined that he would one day be in this position. Without a change in his expression, Yu Qiong whipped the sword around and sliced his neck. A smile was on his face as he watched Elder Mo collapse to the ground. With Ning Luo and Yu Qiong in hand, Yi Qingtang began her search for little Yu Yun. Meanwhile, the alien race people collected the demon cubs and headed back to the Temple of Shadows with the map. Chapter 2047, Underground World, 1. The ancient Yu clan had kept their powers in the west region well hidden. Yi Qingtang and Yu Qiong took a few days before they finally found the spot that was marked on the map. When they finally reached the exact location, all they saw was a stretch of mountains. There wasn't anyone from the ancient Yu clan at all. Is the map fake? Yi Qingtang looked at the stretch of mountains and her brows furrowed. No. Ning Luo suddenly spoke. Yi Qingtang looked towards him and he just closed his eyes, seemingly feeling something. I can sense that. Master is here. Ning Luo opened his eyes. It has been a long since he last felt this way. The breath was weak, but he was certain that little Yu Yun was somewhere around the area. He couldn't confirm where she was since the breath was too weak. Ning Luo's words made Yi Qingtang's heart flutter. On the other hand, Yu Qiong's gaze shifted around. A thought suddenly struck him. I think I know where the ancient Yu clan's men are now. Yi Qingtang looked at Yu Qiong. Yu Qiong's facial injuries had started recovering since he started applying medicine to it. All that was left behind were gruesome-looking scars. At that moment, he had no time to explain anything to Yi Qingtang. He just leaped and flew onto the highest peak among the stretch of mountains. Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo followed right after him. As Yu Qiong stood on the peak, his eyes crinkled while looking in the direction of the sun. Back when I was still with the ancient Yu clan, they had a secret stronghold. It was only because of some accident that the clan master and elders decided to change the location. They considered various locations, and the west region was one of the options. 10,000 years ago, Yu Qiong was still the great elder of the ancient Yu clan. At his position, he was naturally involved in such confidential matters of the ancient Yu clan. If I'm not wrong, the location of the stronghold is right beneath that mountain. Yu Qiong lifted his hand, pointing at the location right beneath the sun. The summit virtually had no presence as it hid among the other mountains. It wasn't noticeable at all. Are you sure? Ning Luo looked at Yu Qiong cautiously. Yu Qiong nodded. I talked to the clan master and the other elders about the change of location and I know that they considered the west region before. Hearing this, Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo's eyes flashed with excitement. At that moment, Ning Luo wanted to fly towards that mountain but Yu Qiong stopped him. Hold on. What's the matter? Ning Luo was perplexed. Yu Qiong turned to look at Yi Qingtang, clasping his hands respectfully as he said, Holy Lord, you should not use ordinary ways if you want to find the ancient Yu clan's location. The ancient Yu clan's stronghold should be hidden somewhere underground and all entrances will be heavily guarded. If you're planning to just barge inside, you will not be able to hide from them. You would expose yourself and not be able to find a thing. Do you have any ideas? Yi Qingtang looked at Yu Qiong. I certainly have ideas. I was originally from the ancient Yu clan after all. If I enter the place, no one would suspect a thing. However, I would have to trouble the two of you to disguise yourselves before we head inside together. Chapter 2048, Underground World, 2. Yu Qiong had requested to come with them because of that. No one knew the ancient Yu clan better than him. Feeling that Yu Qiong's idea was a good one, Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo disguised their appearances. Yi Qingtang disguised as Elder Mo since she had already taken Elder Mo's space ring previously. On the other hand, Ning Luo disguised as one of the wardens under Elder Mo. Holy Lord, the ancient Yu clan has a strict grade system. Though Elder Mo is one of ancient Yu clan's elders, from what I know, he's not highly ranked. Most of the inner sect elders had already moved here long ago, Yu Qiong briefly explained in case Yi Qingtang didn't know about the ancient Yu clan's structure. The ancient Yu clan's elders had different grades. The inner sect elders were of higher rank, followed by elders in charge of legislative matters and martial arts. Yi Qingtang previously met those elders who were promoted at a later stage and were of lower rank. They would only have the opportunity to come into contact with the core members of the ancient Yu clan once they enter the west region. Ever since they had gained control of the spiritual abode, they had been cultivating and absorbing energy from the spiritual abode. Even Yu Qiong had no idea how powerful they had gotten. Above the elders were the clan elder and grand elder. The ancient Yu clan's grand elder and the domain monarch founder were equally powerful and still remained powerful up until now. Now, the clan master was merely holding a temporary position in the ancient Yu clan. The ones truly controlling the ancient Yu clan were the clan elder and grand elder. Holy Lord, you have to be careful once we enter the ancient Yu clan. Yu Qiong looked at Yi Qingtang with a serious expression. Yi Qingtang nodded. She certainly knew she had to keep her guard up. After making sure everything was clear for them, Yu Qiong took Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo to the entrance of the ancient Yu clan. Right beneath the barely noticeable summit was a discreet cave. They walked into the cave and weren't able to find anything even after walking for a long time. However, Yi Qingtang noticed the ground beneath them was a slope, which meant that they were walking downwards, going underground. After a long journey, Yu Qiong noticed a huge stone door hidden deep inside the cave. The stone door was covered in moss, with Yi Qingtang noticing that the corners of the stone door were missing some moss. Looking at Yi Qingtang, Yu Qiong whispered, "Give me a minute." With that, Yu Qiong walked in front and studied the totem on the door. He lifted his arm, pressing the door with a pattern. Right after he did that, the stone door opened, just like that. The ancient Yu clan's guards appeared fully armed behind the stone door. When they noticed the door was ajar, they looked at Yu Qiong and the others warily. They only put away their weapons when they saw Yi Qingtang, who was disguised as Elder Mo. With a domineering demeanor, Yi Qingtang nodded and walked through the stone door with Yu Qiong and Ning Luo. Yi Qingtang's eyes widened when she saw what was behind the stone door. Chapter 2049, Underground World, 3, It was like a whole other world. The ancient Yu clan had dug an entire world into the ground and it was so vast that she couldn't even see the ends of the place. There were springs, streams, green trees and pavilions everywhere. Countless luminescent pearls hung from above, illuminating the entire underground world. How much power did the ancient Yu clan have hidden? With the Temple of Shadow's power, Yi Qingtang thought that she had already investigated the ancient Yu clan thoroughly. But that didn't seem to be the case anymore. No wonder they hadn't reacted at all even when one of their 3 sects was taken out. It turned out they had already begun preparing for everything and had created an underground world where no one could investigate them. Elder Mo, you came at the right time. Elder Yuan is waiting for you, a guard said respectfully. Elder Yuan? She didn't recognize that name but nodded as the guard led the way. But Yu Qiong, who was standing beside her, balked at his name. So he's still alive, he murmured. Seeing his odd expression and hearing what he had said, she asked him, "You know him?" He steeled himself and said, "Holy Lord, we go a long way back. Elder Yuan was already an elder of the ancient Yu clan when Yu Qiong became one." They often butted heads as Yu Qiong was well versed in scheming while Elder Yuan respected martial arts more. After so many years, Yu Qiong thought that he would already be dead and didn't expect him to still be alive. "Holy Lord, you have to be careful when you meet Elder Yuan. Our powers used to be on par with each other but he has probably gotten even stronger. He is extremely ruthless as well, so please be careful." She acknowledged his advice and followed the guard into a pavilion. The guard asked her to wait for a while as he went to inform Elder Yuan of their arrival. After a long while, a haggard man walked into the room with his back straight and standing tall. He walked slowly and there seemed to be a glow around him. "Why is it just you two? Where are the rest?" He frowned as he saw only Yi Qingtang and Yu Qiong in the room. Yi Qingtang looked at him and was stunned. It was him. This white-robed old man was the one who had led the ancient Yu clan to attack the first mainland and take little Yu Yun away from her all those years ago. Despite having prepared herself, she was taken by surprise. She had asked Lady Ghost and the rest to look up the white-robed old man back when she was investigating the ancient Yu clan, but they had not been able to find anything. So, it turned out that he was Elder Yuan. Yi Qingtang quickly came to her senses and suppressed her feelings. On the surface, she spoke to him politely. "Greetings, Elder Yuan. We ran into a huge group of escaping demons on the way. The other two elders decided to hunt for the demon cubs while we headed here first to report back to you." This was the story that Yu Qiong and her had discussed previously. After all, the ancient Yu clan needed to have enough demons to sacrifice if they wanted more power. Chapter 2050, Pagoda capturing demon cubs had become more difficult due to interference from the Temple of Shadows previously. Elder Yuan didn't think much of her words. The ancient Yu clan was in dire need of demon cubs after all. "Understood. You can leave," Elder Yuan spat at them impatiently before leaving. They had their own rooms here, and the guard left after showing them to their quarters. They waited till there was no one before Ning Luo spoke up. "I could feel her aura on him." That was not the only thing that he had sensed when he saw Elder Yuan. He had also sensed that his master was here. Her aura was incredibly thick and filled the entire underground world. "She's here?" Yi Qingtang asked as she looked at him. He nodded. "Definitely." She pondered for a moment. They had not raised any suspicion with the people of the ancient Yu clan, and so they should be able to move freely. "Ning Luo, try to sense it more clearly and see if you can tell where she is." "Well, go look for her now." Ning Luo agreed. Even though Yu Qiong had no idea who they were searching for, he could tell that she was important from what they were saying. "Holy Lord, please be careful." He was going to stay here in case anything happened. Yi Qingtang nodded and followed Ning Luo out. This was the first time Elder Mo had set foot here, so she could use the excuse of familiarizing herself to wander around. Pretending not to know anything, she started walking along the streets. Even though the place was huge, there was a sense of oppression wherever she went. The children wandering the streets all had cold expressions and it was extremely quiet. She noticed many pillars standing tall with intricate carvings on them. They reached from the ground to the sky. All the pillars glowed faintly. Her eyes swept over them and she briefly counted 108 pillars. It was strange, they were all in odd positions. She had just arrived here and had no idea what these pillars were for, but she suddenly thought of Ling Yan. With his intellect, he would probably be able to tell at a glance what they were for. However, she could feel a headache coming on as she thought of his terrible martial arts skills. With his skills, she still didn't dare take him out into the battlefield in case he got heavily injured. "Ning Luo, have you noticed anything?" she asked. His expression was odd. "I can't tell. I keep feeling like she is nearby but can't pinpoint the location." He couldn't make sense of the feeling as well. Little Yu Yun's aura seemed to be spread across the entire place and he could sense it everywhere. This meant he couldn't quite sense the exact location she was in. "But I can feel that her aura is strongest near pillars," he said. "Near the pillars?" She could feel her head starting to throb as she looked at the pillars. There were 108 of them. Chapter 2051, Pagoda 2, Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo decided to head to the nearest pillar to take a look before proceeding. As they approached the pillar, they realized that it was not a pillar at all. It was a huge pagoda. The pagoda looked extremely strange. It looked like a stone pillar from afar, but on closer look, it had a door at the bottom and windows in between the lines etched on it. But the windows were all tightly shut and they couldn't see into them at all. There were many guards outside the pillars. Rather than approach them head-on, she decided to hide in a corner. "How is it?" she asked Ning Luo. "I can feel her aura getting stronger as we near the pagodas." Was little Yu Yun in these pagodas? There was no way for Yi Qingtang to check, but Ning Luo had said that all the pagodas were giving off strong auras. So she brought him to a few other pagodas to check. Just as expected, Ning Luo sensed the same aura when he approached the pagodas. She was speechless. Every pagoda contained little Yu Yun's aura. How was it possible for her to be spread over so many pagodas? Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo were both extremely puzzled. She still had no idea what the pagodas were for, so she headed back to ask Yu Qiong about it. But he had no clue either. He had already left the ancient Yu clan when the underground world was being constructed, so he also did not know what the pagodas were for. But Ning Luo still had a trick up his sleeve. He asked the soldiers around about the pagodas and soon returned with new information. They didn't tell me much about the pagodas but told me not to get too close or the clan elders would punish me, Ning Luo said. The more Yu Qingtang heard about the pagodas, the more she felt that there was something weird about them. Under the dark cover of night, she snuck out to one of the pillars. After waiting a long while, she suddenly saw Elder Yuan bringing a group of youths towards one of the pillars. She was even more stunned as she spotted a petite figure behind him. Little Luo Shui, the boy's face was blank and his eyes completely devoid of emotion as he stood behind Elder Yuan. Elder Yuan opened one of the pagoda entrances and ushered the youths in before closing the door. After that, he brought another group of them to a different pagoda and guided them in as well. She had no idea what he was doing, but little Luo Shui remained at his side the whole time. He turned to face little Luo Shui after everyone else was gone. At that moment, another ancient Yu clan elder walked over to Elder Yuan and whispered something in Elder Yuan's ear. Elder Yuan's expression turned strange as little Luo Shui and he said something to him. Chapter 2052, Pagoda 3. Although Yu Qingtang couldn't hear what he was saying, there was no way she could get closer. But she had personally seen Ming Di and little Luo Shui battling to the death before. He was powerful enough to fight Ming Di as an equal, which meant that his strength was tremendous. Little Luo Shui stood tall. Whether it was due to Elder Yuan's words or not, he blinked and started walking towards a pagoda some distance away. Seeing that he was walking off on his own, her heart jolted. She quickly gathered Ning Luo and they started following him in the dark. Little Luo Shui stopped in front of a pagoda. He opened the door and walked in. The pagoda was strange. Even though it looked just like the others, there were no guards outside of it. Exchanging knowing glances, Yu Qingtang and Ning Luo moved slowly towards the pagoda. They entered it easily since there were no guards around. The moment she entered, she could feel a strong power surrounding the entire pagoda. It was a familiar yet strange feeling. This feeling. She had felt it before. It was when she had accidentally stepped into the hell of Avicenaraka. She couldn't understand this feeling. There is a strong force in this pagoda. Ning Luo looked at the floating lights in the pagoda. The entire inside of the pagoda seemed to be infused with some sort of energy. Ning Luo felt an extreme sense of familiarity with the power. It was from her spiritual abode. Just as they were about to ascend the pagoda to take a better look, Ning Luo suddenly felt some movement in the power within the pagoda. He quickly grabbed Yu Qingtang and flew out of the pagoda. Little Luo Shui descended from the top of the pagoda just as they left. His gaze swept over the pagoda but he didn't notice anything amiss. He looked blankly at the entrance of the pagoda and raised his hand, about to open the door and head outside for a look. But just as he was about to open the door, a loud, crazed shriek came from above. His expression tightened for an instant as he heard the shriek. Without a care for anything else, he quickly flew up and rushed towards the top of the pagoda. Yu Qingtang and Ning Luo could hear the screams despite having left the pagoda. What's that sound? Goosebumps appeared all over her skin as she heard the cries. They couldn't make out the gender of the person screaming at all. If anything, the scream did not even sound human. The shriek seemed to be able to pierce a person's soul and make them tremble. Look at the pagoda, Ning Luo said as he narrowed his eyes. As the shrieks echoed through the air, there was a change in the pagoda, and this soon spread to the other pagodas. The white glow slowly became red. Strong surges of power came from the pagodas. The red light was accompanied by immense power, which gradually spread from the top of the pagodas to the underground world. Soon enough, the top of the underground world was soon covered in red light, enshrouding the entire underground world in a crimson-red glow. Chapter 2053, Frightening Might. 1. The red light seared into their eyes, making it difficult for them to see. A wave of dizziness hit Yu Qingtang. Fortunately, Ning Luo was doing much better and he dragged the pale her into the shade. Yi Qingtang grabbed her swollen head in pain. It felt as though something was sapping away all of her strength. Through the haze of her mind, she saw the doors of the huge pagodas all burst open suddenly as the youths who had entered before this all started walking out. Their numbers were far beyond what Yi Qingtang had seen previously. Hundreds to thousands of youths walked out of each pagoda. Bathed in the red light, the youths lifted their heads as their silver eyes fixated on the top of the pagodas. She didn't see the rest as the strong feeling of dizziness sent her into a stupor as darkness claimed her. When she woke up the next day, the feeling of nausea had not completely dissipated. She sat up suddenly, not knowing when she had returned to her room. "You're awake." Ning Luo was sitting on a chair by her side as he looked at her calmly. Yu Qiong, who was at her side as well, looked at her worriedly. "What happened last night? How did you?" Yu Qiong frowned as he couldn't stop worrying about Yi Qingtang, who was still looking pale. He had felt the aura of the underground world turn strange not long after Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo had left last night. Then not long after, Ning Luo had returned carrying an unconscious Yi Qingtang. Her face had been as pale as a sheet then and she had been soaked in sweat. Yu Qiong had called her a few times but she did not wake up. "I'm not sure," she said as she rubbed her aching temple. The last thing she remembered was the youths exiting the pagodas. What had happened after that? "It was the spiritual abode," Ning Luo said softly. "What do you mean?" she asked. Gaze turning towards the window, he looked at the pagodas not far from them with a strange expression. "She was releasing her spiritual abode. I'm familiar with the feeling, but that was the first time you were experiencing it, so your body couldn't cope. But you can check to see if there are any changes to your body," he said as he looked at her. What did he mean by that? She checked herself again. She was stunned by what she found. Her spirit realm level had risen. In just one night, her spirit realm level had risen by a whole heaven level. This shocked her to the core. But she couldn't express this in front of Yu Qiong. After all, to him, she was the powerful Holy Lord of Shadows. "Yu Qiong, go find out more about the pagodas. I have something to discuss with Ning Luo," she said. He quickly left without any suspicion toward them. She waited till he left before speaking to Ning Luo. "You're saying that the red light yesterday is from little Yu Yun releasing her spiritual abode?" Ning Luo nodded. "You should consider yourself lucky that you were strong enough yesterday, or you would have exploded under the influence of the spiritual abode." Chapter 2054, Frightening Might, 2, Yi Qingtang's expression was complicated. She didn't doubt the seriousness of his words at all. After all, her sudden leap in strength already proved how powerful the red light was. No wonder the ancient Yu clan is gathering all their troops here. She was still unsure of the reason previously, but everything was clear now after she had experienced it herself. The spiritual abode was extremely powerful. Just the power of the white glow on the pagodas was already letting out power from the spiritual abode continuously, strengthening the ancient Yu clan. The power of the spiritual abode rose by more than 100 times when the light turned red. The streets had been empty when they had gone out previously. There was almost nobody in sight. Even the youths that were with Elder Yuan had been sent back to their respective pagodas and were not roaming outside. This power was not something that everyone could tolerate. Yi Qingtang, who already had a strong bloodline as well as the deity Ocean, was still knocked out the first time she encountered the spiritual abode. There was no way Elder Yuan and the others would have been able to tolerate the massive power. Only the youths who had devoured the demon cubs and cultivated themselves could deal with such overwhelming power. "If I'm not wrong, little Yu Yun should be in the pagoda we entered yesterday," she said. Little Yu Yun was the only one who could control the spiritual abode. She realized yesterday that the red light had originated from that pagoda. The scream that she heard before the red light was a clue as well. Ning Luo's eyes flashed as he agreed with her deduction. After so many hardships, she had finally found little Yu Yun. But there didn't seem to be any other youths in the pagoda yesterday other than little Luo Shui. She had only seen little Luo Shui enter the pagoda yesterday. The other youths had come out from the pagodas when the red light started shining, but little Luo Shui had been standing alone outside his pagoda. Ning Luo nodded. The spiritual abode did not affect him, so he had seen everything. Yi Qingtang pressed her lips together. Ning Luo and her had almost been caught yesterday. It was lucky little Luo Shui didn't recognize her now, otherwise, she was afraid that he would attack if he noticed them. We have to find a way to enter the pagoda, she said softly. She returned to her room quickly with the news. While he no longer had his high status, Yu Qiong had several tricks up his sleeve that he had used to make himself an elder. He managed to get some clues from the ancient Yu clan people. From what I know, only youths can enter the pagodas and they seem to be cultivating there. They go in every 3 days, and once they're inside, they will cultivate for another 3 days. When they come out, their power would have increased significantly. But, there is one pagoda that no one is allowed to enter other than a little guy. Even the other youths are not allowed in, Yu Qiong reported back to her. Chapter 2055, Frightening Might, 3, Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo looked at each other and pointed towards the pagoda that little Luo Shui had entered yesterday. Is that the pagoda you're talking about? Yu Qiong nodded. Yi Qingtang instantly understood everything. It seemed that Ning Luo and her deduction was correct. However, how was she going to enter to find little Yu Yun? And how was she going to make her come to her senses after finding her? No, wait. She suddenly thought of something. There would be an opportunity soon when the Crimson League attacked the ancient Yu clan. But there would only be one chance. They might move little Yu Yun elsewhere after the battle started. There were only a few more days at most before the Crimson League came to attack. She could gather more information in the meantime. Since they had almost been discovered before, she decided not to enter another pagoda with Ning Luo. It was much easier for her to move around in the underground world since she was using Elder Mo's identity. After observing the place for 2 days, she realized that Elder Yuan would send a group of youths into the pagodas every night and that everyone would return to their own abodes after night fell. The red light appeared every single night onwards as well, and Yi Qingtang was slowly getting used to it. And with that, her power grew in leaps and bounds. In just a few days, her power had transcended to the heavenly venerate fourth heaven. The power of little Yu Yun's spiritual abode was mind-blowing. She now understood why they had put so much importance on her spiritual abode and why they hadn't given up on it after so many years. It was no wonder the ancient Yu clan had been able to rise so fast and their youths had become so immensely powerful in such a short time. In fact, killing off the second domain would be easy for them if they gave the ancient Yu clan enough time. On one of the days, the ancient Yu clan inner sect leaders gathered to discuss matters. Elder Mo wasn't part of the inner sect and wasn't invited, but it seemed like they were discussing something important. Yi Qingtang contacted Ling Yan with the voice transmission stone. Ling Yan, how's the situation with me over there? Well, be there in at most half a day, so Miss Yi, you will have to calculate your time wisely. Ling Yan's smiling voice came through the voice transmission stone. This one sentence made her heart jump. So quickly. No wonder there was a sudden movement in the ancient Yu clan. Alright, I understand. I will let you know if there are any updates. Yi Qingtang cut their communication off and went to find Ning Luo. The Crimson League will be here soon. The ancient Yu clan must have found out and are preparing for a battle now. We will infiltrate the pagoda the moment they start fighting, she said. Ning Luo agreed. Her worries were quickly assuaged. Since the ancient Yu clan was preparing for a battle with the Crimson League, little Luo Shui was quickly brought out from the pagoda since he was their main power. As little Luo Shui left the pagoda, the other youths were sent out as well. The entire army was quickly assembled and their numbers exceeded her expectations. So the Crimson League had arrived. The battle had begun. Chapter 2056, Little Yu Yun, 1, the Crimson League troops were already gathered outside the stretch of mountains. Flying beasts roamed the skies as the air filled with their roars. As the one leading the ancient Yu clan, Elder Yuan's face was as dark as charcoal when he heard the news. How did the Crimson League know where to find us? Elder Yuan's eyes flitted over the people in front of him. This question had been in his mind ever since he heard the news. Was Elder Lu captured by the Crimson League when he went hunting the demon cubs? Another elder said with a frown. Elder Lu was supposed to return with Elder Mo but had yet to do so. This was entirely possible. No one suspected that Elder Mo was an impostor since he had Yu Qiong beside him. Not only that, Elder Yuan and Yu Qiong knew each other well, and he had confirmed Yi Qingtang's fake identity with Yu Qiong. Useless trash. Elder Yuan's face darkened further. Is the clan master back? Not yet. Elder Yuan narrowed his eyes. The underground world couldn't be attacked now. The spiritual abode couldn't land in the Crimson League's hands. Let that little guy protect the pagoda while we head to battle. Get him to leave with her through the secret passage if anything goes wrong, Elder Yuan ordered. A guard immediately went to convey his order. Little Luo Shui, who was already in the troops, turned back as he heard the order. The ancient Yu clan troops set off as he left, ready to battle the Crimson League and the Temple of Shadows. On the other side, after watching little Luo Shui leave and confirming that the ancient Yu clan troops had set off, Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo entered the pagoda stealthily. Yu Qiong was left in his room. When Yi Qingtang entered the pagoda again, she felt the same as she did the last time. She couldn't see the ceiling at all from the first floor. Go. She started flying towards the top of the pagoda with Ning Luo behind her. Just as they started flying towards the top of the pagoda, a small figure appeared outside. Little Luo Shui walked into the pagoda expressionlessly. The moment he entered, he sensed two auras that didn't belong. The pagoda was taller than they expected. They finally reached the top floor after flying for a long while. At the top was a huge stone door. There was a strange totem carved on it. Ning Luo suddenly stepped forward as he looked at the door and pushed it open. What they saw behind the door stunned them. There was another world behind the door. It was so vast that it didn't look like it fit into the pagoda at all. The entire space was filled with light which looked like it was swimming before their eyes. There was a petite figure suspended in the air in the middle of all this, with colorful lights wrapped around her. Little Yu Yun, Yi Qingtang looked at the familiar figure in front of her as her heart trembled. Wasn't that little Yu Yun, whom she had been looking for such a long time? At that moment, little Yu Yun seemed to be sleeping. Her eyes were tightly shut as a huge ball of light floated in front of her head. The light seemed to fill the entire place and spilled over endlessly to the entire underground world. Chapter 2057, Little Yu Yun, 2. Little Yu Yun seemed to have become the spiritual abode carrier and the ancient Yu clan was using her to absorb its power. Why had they left all the important members of the ancient Yu clan here? Because they had transformed this place to an endless supply of power feeding them. Yi Qingtang looked at little Yu Yun, who looked exactly like she was in her memories. But the situation in front of her made her heart ache. Beside her, Ning Luo's gaze was cold. He was staring right at his master whom he had been seeking for a long time, but the sight just made his blood boil. Humans would forever be this selfish. In the next second, Ning Luo flew up and leaped towards little Yu Yun. Boom! A loud boom rumbled through the air. A huge wave of power suddenly rippled forth from little Yu Yun, throwing Ning Luo away from her. Ignoring the intense pain coursing through his body, he looked up at the master he had looked forward to seeing for so many years. What was going on? There was no reaction from little Yu Yun at all. Her eyes remained shut and she showed no signs of waking up. Ning Luo was about to step forward again when she was stopped by Yi Qingtang. Look at the light around her, she said. What do you mean? He asked. Little Yu Yun seems to still be in deep sleep. The light on her chest is the power of the spiritual abode, but the lights around her are the work of the ancient Yu clan. They're using the light to power their entire underground world and it has formed a barrier around her using the power of the spiritual abode as well. You have to find a way to destroy those lights around her if you want to save her. Ning Luo frowned and nodded. Yi Qingtang looked carefully at the threads of light around her and realized that there were 107 of them. Excluding the pagoda they were currently in, this corresponded exactly to the number of pagodas in the underground world. Lifting her sword, She tried destroying the threads but to no avail. It seems like we have to destroy the pagodas to destroy these lights. Her brows furrowed slightly. This was not good news at all. Even though the ancient Yu clan had already sent their best soldiers out to battle the Crimson League, there was still a small group of people guarding the underground world. It would be easy for them to sneak little Yu Yun out, but to destroy 107 pagodas under their noses. That was impossible. Do we not have any other options? Ning Luo's face was falling. Give me a little more time to think. She knew that they didn't have much time, and her mind was racing, seeking a way as quickly as it could. But just as she was still pondering how to get rid of the barrier, a figure suddenly appeared behind her. Leave this place now, a cold voice said. They turned towards the voice, only to realize little Luo Shui had somehow appeared behind them. Yi Qingtang was shocked. Why was he back? She had personally seen him being brought away. He gazed at them emotionlessly as the aura around him started stirring. It would be an easy feat for him to kill them off. Chapter 2058, Little Yu Yun, 3, Yi Qingtang's mind raced at this critical moment. She quickly wiped the look of surprise off her face, composed herself, and said, Leave? Have you forgotten who I am? Her tone was solemn and held traces of anger. Ning Luo, who was at the side, had no idea why she had suddenly changed her tone and could only remain still. Little Luo Shui's eyes wavered as he looked at the elder in front of him. At that moment, she was still wearing Elder Mo's face. Little Luo Shui had been with the other ancient Yu clan forces before. When Yi Qingtang had gone to the ancient Yu clan valley to save the Jiang family, he had attacked them. She guessed that he would have been raised by the ancient Yu clan forces. With his power, there was no way he had not seen Elder Mo before. He looked at her for a long time as he gradually recognized her. He withdrew his aura but continued staring at her in hostility. You shouldn't be here. Bullshit, she said with a scoff as her face darkened. With the Crimson League and the Temple of Shadows at our door, this place is no longer safe. This girl holds the survival of our clan in her hands and cannot continue staying in this dangerous place. Little Luo Shui's eyebrows furrowed slightly as he recalled what Elder Yuan had told him. Elder Yuan had asked him to protect little Yu Yun. He had instructed him to leave this place and seek the ancient Yu clan's grand elder if they lost. However, why were they moving little Yu Yun when the battle had just started? Did Elder Yuan have other arrangements? Little Luo Shui was still young, and with his consciousness controlled by the ancient Yu clan, he couldn't escape the shackles of the ancient Yu clan, and his thinking was extremely narrow. Furthermore, he had seen Elder Mo before. Elder Yuan ordered me to stay here and only leave with her if we lost, he declared. Even though he had said this, Yi Qingtang could sense doubt in his voice, which made her sigh with relief inwardly. Fortunately for them, while little Luo Shui was extremely powerful, he was still young and naive. Elder Yuan asked you to come here not to wait for her but to move her to someplace safe. Now that the Crimson League has discovered our location and we still don't know who disclosed it, we cannot be sure that they won't find her. So for the sake of her safety, we must move her elsewhere immediately. It won't be too late to bring her back if we win, but nothing is worse than losing her if we are defeated. Yi Qingtang said all this with a straight face and solemn voice. She perfectly mimicked Elder Mo when he was angry. His words were completely taken in by the naive little Luo Shui. It seemed like nothing was conflicting between Elder Yuan and Elder Mo's words. There is no room for mistakes regarding her safety, she emphasized. Little Luo Shui's eyes trembled as he heard the word safety. He gazed at the unconscious little Yu Yun. Her safety was his top priority. Yi Qingtang was still waiting for his response when little Luo Shui suddenly flew to little Yu Yun's side and pulled her to him. But the light around little Yu Yun released its power again, pushing him away. She was speechless. Just 3 steps. What a huge difference in treatment between them. Chapter 2059, Little Yu Yun, 4, Yi Qingtang remained still. She had no idea how to free little Yu Yun short of destroying all the pagodas. So she could only wait for little Luo Shui to make a move. It seemed like he knew how to deal with it. He did not react at all even as he was thrown a few steps back. He moved forward again as a strong force appeared all around him. With strong force, little Luo Shui broke right through the barrier and grabbed her wrist. In the next second, the force around little Luo Shui destroyed the light surrounding her. Yi Qingtang was speechless. Ning Luo had no words as well. Even though Divine King Luo Shui had been reborn, this amount of power was absurd. Let's go. Little Luo Shui wrapped little Yu Yun gently in his arms as though he was holding the world's most precious pearl. Yi Qingtang quickly regained her senses. She took out a coat from her space ring and lay it over little Yu Yun. Little Luo Shui was puzzled. To prevent people from noticing her, she made up something with a straight face. Little Luo Shui didn't suspect her at all since he was completely loyal to the ancient Yu clan. Yi Qingtang suddenly felt grateful that she had brought Yu Qiong along. Without him, she would never have been able to pose as Elder Mo and trick this little kid here. Now that they had saved little Yu Yun, Ning Luo and her wasted no time at all and left the pagoda immediately. As Yi Qingtang was posing as Elder Mo and little Luo Shui was a well-known weapon of the ancient Yu clan, no one batted an eye as they walked down the streets. She discreetly asked Ning Luo to get Yu Qiong. He rushed over just to turn pale as he looked at the little Luo Shui beside her. The ancient Yu clan had started raising youths after he returned and the strongest of them all was standing right in front of him. However, why was he standing beside her? Warden Qiong, now that we have started the battle, we need to move her to a safe place as soon as possible. Yi Qingtang gave him a look. Yu Qiong was extremely smart and understood her intentions at once. Yes. We will follow Elder Mo's words. The higher-ranked elders had all gone into battle to deal with the Crimson League, leaving the underground world free. Since Elder Mo's ranking was the highest there now, they could walk around freely. They were going to seize this opportunity to sneak little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui out. However, we're leaving by the secret passage, little Luo Shui said as he looked at the main door. Secret passage? Yi Qingtang and Yu Qiong looked at each other in surprise. They had no idea where it was. Nevertheless, you should walk ahead. I will observe you from the back in case anyone is following us, she said without missing a beat. Without thinking too much, little Luo Shui turned around and started walking towards the secret passage. They followed behind him. At that moment, Yi Qingtang was glad that he was so young and that he had been so thoroughly brainwashed by the ancient Yu clan. Another normal adult wouldn't have believed her. The secret passage was well hidden, and if not for little Luo Shui leading the way, they would never have found it. Chapter 2060, Grand Elder, 1. Yi Qingtang thought that they would leave the underground world once they entered the underground world, but to her surprise, another palace appeared in front of her after they had walked a short while. Their footsteps wavered and Yu Qiong's expression was dark. What's wrong? Yi Qingtang noticed his expression and asked. I have a bad feeling about this. What do you mean? Yi Qingtang asked. Over 10,000 years ago, when I was still a great elder of the ancient Yu clan, the clan master wasn't who it is now, but another one who was as famous as the domain monarch founder Jiang Yu. Yu Qiong lifted his eyes to look at the carvings on the huge palace entrance. Those pictures, they belong to him, his brows furrowed even deeper. I've heard from the other ancient Yu clan members that the Grand Elder isn't actually dead. It's just that. I've never seen him in the underground world or with the ancient Yu clan. His words stunned her. Just as they were whispering to each other, little Luo Shui carried little Yu Yun into the old palace. A sudden feeling of unease rose in her heart. Her words hadn't aroused little Luo Shui's suspicions, but Elder Yuan's order was something they had not considered. It turned out he had instructed him to bring little Yu Yun to the ancient Yu clan Grand Elder if anything went wrong. Seeing that little Luo Shui had already entered the palace and that they had to pass through it if they wanted to leave through the secret passage, Yi Qingtang and the rest decided that they couldn't abandon them and turn back. So they had no choice but to continue onwards. She just hoped that the ancient Yu clan Grand Elder wasn't here. A strong aura of death hit them as they entered the palace. But it was completely different from the aura that the undead clan gave out. It was the stench of rot. It was dark in the main hall, but the pillars were all carved with lifelike Buddhas. The Buddhas all looked different. For some reason, the scene reminded her of the murderous Buddhas in the hell of Avicenaraka. Who is it? A low voice echoed from the center of the main hall. The lights in the main hall lit up with the voice and illuminated the whole palace. A dim figure was sitting high above them. It was the source of the voice they heard. "Greeting, Grand Elder," little Luo Shui said politely as he knelt on one knee. His words struck Yi Qingtang's heart like a bolt of lightning. What terrible luck they had. It was the ancient Yu clan Grand Elder. What pure power, the distant voice said. He seemed to be looking at little Yu Yun, who was still in little Luo Shui's arms. "Bring her over." He stepped forward with her. Little Yu Yun's chest still glowed with faint light. As they approached the figure with little Yu Yun, Yi Qingtang and the rest finally saw what the Grand Elder looked like. It made her face instantly turn pale. The Grand Elder was nothing but a dried-up corpse. Chapter 2061, Grand Elder, 2. On the seat was a dried-up corpse, his thin hands hidden in huge, expensive clothes. On his wrinkled face, a pair of empty eyes were staring straight at little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui. He gently took little Yu Yun from little Luo Shui's arms, treating her as though she was a precious pearl. How was this possible? Yu Qiong stared in disbelief at the dried corpse who was the Grand Elder. His eyes were as big as saucers. He recalled that before he had left the ancient Yu clan, the Grand Elder had still looked like a normal person. So, what exactly was going on? It's been a long time, Yu Qiong. The Grand Elder lifted his head. He moved slowly, pulling at his dried-up skin, which seemed like it was going to tear at any moment. Yu Qiong's legs jerked as he dropped to the floor, cold sweat covering his body. There was only one person in the ancient Yu clan who could make him feel this oppressed. Greetings. Clan Master, Clan Master. The Grand Elder shook his head and continued, "I've long handed over the clan to the next generation. It has been 10,000 years since I've seen you. You look just as you did before, but I've become like this." His eyes seemed to move over to Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo. His parched lips started moving. "Yu Qiong, you've brought me a great present." Yu Qiong was brought back to his senses. The Grand Elder suddenly raised his hands and a gust of black wind flew towards Yi Qingtang. She leaped up as a sword appeared in her hand and she cut the black wind in half. Little Luo Shui frowned, not understanding why the Grand Elder was attacking Elder Mo. But Yi Qingtang was clear that her disguise would not fool the ancient Yu clan patriarch. What a familiar aura. I've felt it on an old friend before who has vanished now. But, you're a little different from him. The Grand Elder lifted his head as he looked at her like she was an interesting specimen. What's your purpose for pretending to be a member of the ancient Yu clan? Who are you? The Buddha sculptures on the 4 pillars started shifting with his words. In the next second, they came to life. They dropped to the floor in an instant and started attacking Yi Qingtang with their Dharma treasures held high. I don't care who you are. Anyone who disturbs my rest has to die. The Grand Elder's hoarse voice was cold and indifferent, as though they were mere ants standing in front of him. With that, the Buddhas started attacking Yi Qingtang. Her eyes narrowed as black flames appeared on her sword. Boom! A thunderous sound exploded across the room as she swung her sword. The black flames fell from the sky all over the Buddhas, but it didn't seem to hurt them at all. Be careful. These Buddhas are all above the holy venerate realm. Sensing that something was wrong, Ning Luo quickly flew over to her to aid in battle. These Buddhas were all above the holy venerate level. And how powerful was the Grand Elder that he could control these statues like they were his playthings. Chapter 2062, Grand Elder, 3. Yi Qingtang and the rest were surrounded by the sculptures and Grand Elder just looked at them with an expression filled with disinterest. You came earlier than expected, but it's fine. It's an opportunity for me to try out some of the strongest powers from the second domain, the Grand Elder said. He suddenly stood up, with little Yu Yun in his arms as he walked away. "Follow me," Grand Elder ordered little Luo Shui. Little Luo Shui's expression was a little off initially. Then his eyes met with Grand Elder's eyes that glinted with red light. All his emotions just dissipated once she saw the red light. His eyes lost focus and he was almost soulless, just following behind the Grand Elder. On the other hand, Yi Qingtang was dealing with the sculptures. When she saw the Grand Elder leaving with little Luo Shui and little Yu Yun, she instantly had a bad feeling. Ning Luo seemed to also have sensed the risk. He suddenly transformed into a sword. "Use me." Ning Luo had transformed into the Ice Frost Divine Sword that was now in Yi Qingtang's hand. Yi Qingtang's eyes were filled with determination as she held the Ice Frost Divine Sword firmly, waving it in one swift motion. The seemingly indestructible sculpture collapsed once the Ice Frost Divine Sword struck it. As Yi Qingtang started destroying the sculptures, they had all become shattered rocks. She couldn't be bothered with anything else and quickly chased after Grand Elder. "Be careful, Holy Lord." Yu Qiong regained his senses and warned her. "I don't know what the Grand Elder plans to do, but judging from his appearance, I don't think he will be able to last in that body for long. That boy seems to be extraordinary. I'm guessing that the Grand Elder plans to overtake," Yu Qiong said. He had been working under the Grand Elder for many years and naturally knew the Grand Elder's personality more than anyone else. Yu Qiong had already sensed something weird when the Grand Elder didn't appear previously, but now he could already guess what was going to happen. The ancient Yu clan had been under the Jiang family's oppression when the domain monarch founder, Jiang Yu, was in power. The Grand Elder held the position of master back then and was very indignant about it. He made use of the ancient Yu clan's power to search for quite a number of forbidden skills. With Yu Qiong's understanding of the Grand Elder only landed in this predicament because he took the risk and performed the forbidden skills. This must be the reason why he handed the position of master to someone else and remained hidden here. It turned out he was making use of the spiritual abode's powers to nourish his spirit root and search for a body that was powerful enough. Little Luo Shui must have been included in the Grand Elder's plans. It was only brought forward a day earlier because of the Crimson League's affairs. When she heard Yu Qiong's words, Yi Qingtang became even more worried and she didn't dare waste a single second. She chased after them at the fastest speed possible. On the other hand, the Grand Elder took little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui to the underground altar. He had prepared for this for many years. "Lie down there." Grand Elder left behind some red pigment between little Luo Shui's brows using his sharp fingernail. Little Luo Shui was expressionless as he lay on the altar, lacking any focus in his eyes. The Grand Elder watched little Luo Shui, who was completely under his control, before riveting his eyes on little Yu Yun, who was asleep in his arms, before he took a deep breath. When he took in a deep breath, the aura surrounding little Yu Yun seemed to have been taken away from her. It was taken in by Grand Elder. Chapter 2063, Possession, 1. The Grand Elder's skin started plumping up rapidly as his eyes glowed red. He looked extremely unusual. Then in the blink of an eye, his body had returned to its normal, terrifying self. And with that, his gaze turned to little Luo Shui, who was lying on the altar. Yi Qingtang rushed as quickly as she could over to them, only to see the Grand Elder opening his mouth wide as a dark aura flowed from his mouth continuously into little Luo Shui's forehead. "He wants to possess him." Yu Qiong was shocked to see this. If the Grand Elder managed to possess him successfully, little Luo Shui's power would belong to him, and there would be nothing else they could do. As he worried, Yi Qingtang flew up into the air. A cold light illuminated her ice sword as she swung it directly towards the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder, who was busy trying to possess little Luo Shui, hadn't expected them to defeat the stone Buddhas so quickly. The cold light completely severed the connection between the Grand Elder and little Luo Shui. Boom! The possession was stopped by force and the Grand Elder seemed to have taken a huge blow. He took a few steps back as fresh blood spurted from his mouth. Scoundrel! The pathetic-looking Grand Elder's eye glowed red. He had almost taken the little boy's body as his. The Buddha statues had been made with little Yu Yun's spiritual abode and were extremely powerful in the central mainland. How were they destroyed this quickly? He never would have thought that Yi Qingtang had used the sword that the extraordinary lady had given her to destroy the Buddhas. The Ice Frost Divine Sword had followed the extraordinary lady her whole life and was imbued with the strong spiritual abode. It was the only weapon in the central mainland that could destroy the Buddha statues. Who are you? Why are you fighting against the ancient Yu clan? The Grand Elder gritted his teeth and glared at Yi Qingtang as he held his throbbing chest. She didn't speak. Seeing that the Grand Elder was injured, she raised her hand to follow up with another blow. A red light suddenly appeared in the Grand Elder's hand, and her disguise broke under the red light. Yi Qingtang's beautiful face was revealed to the Grand Elder. With just a glance, the Grand Elder stood rooted to the ground. Holy Lord of Shadows. It's you. The Grand Elder's eyes widened in surprise. He had never imagined that the person impersonating Elder Mo would be the Holy Lord of Shadows herself. Seeing that her disguise had been broken and the Grand Elder staring terrified at her, she composed herself and took advantage of the situation. It's been a long time since we've last met, Yi Qingtang said. The Grand Elder's face was extremely dark. No wonder. No wonder you could defeat the statues. Yi Qingtang's face was completely devoid of emotion, but she knew the truth about the situation. The only reason they had defeated the statues was because of Ning Luo's swordplay. She could feel that the Grand Elder's will had weakened, probably because the person standing in front of him was the Holy Lord of Shadows. He knew that there was no way he could win in this situation. After all, the Holy Lord of Shadows was the most powerful person in the central mainland. The only reason the Grand Elder wanted to possess little Luo Shue's body was so that he could become even stronger. He had also previously received reports that little Luo Shue and Ming Di had been fighting as equals. Chapter 2064, Possession, 2, Ming Di was as powerful as the Holy Lord of Shadows, which was what made the Grand Elder want to possess little Luo Shue's body so much. In his current state, how could he be a match for the Holy Lord of Shadows? Holy Lord of Shadows, you must have infiltrated the ancient Yu clan for her. The Grand Elder narrowed his eyes and pointed towards little Yu Yun. Yi Qingtang raised her eyebrows gently without replying, silently confirming what he had said. Her silent confirmation gave him some hope. This little girl's spiritual abode is indeed very powerful. Holy Lord, you may have an interest in it, but won't be able to understand how to use it fully in such a short while, the Grand Elder said after weighing his options. The ancient Yu clan has been studying the spiritual abode for tens of thousands of years and we understand it well. If the Holy Lord is willing, we can cooperate. After all, the central mainland is just in the first domain. You were originally from the second domain and must know how vast the place is. Why would you want to stay here? The Grand Elder spoke cautiously. He had been too overconfident previously, thinking that nothing would go wrong since no one would enter the underground world and Buddha statues were guarding him. Who would have thought that he would meet with someone unexpected? Since he was alone here, he had to cooperate with Yi Qingtang if he wanted to live. You want to work with me? She looked at the Grand Elder lightly. It's only natural for the strong to form an alliance. Isn't the same with the Temple of Shadows and the Crimson League? But, the Grand Elder paused before continuing, the Crimson League doesn't seem to value the Temple of Shadows much. When you vanished, they removed the Temple of Shadows from their alliance. You probably won't be able to regain your old standing even if you return to the Crimson League now. But indifferent, the Grand Elder said as he looked at her. The ancient Yu clan and the Temple of Shadows are of about the same strength and were both from the first domain. If we join hands, we would be able to defeat the second domain in a day. After all, we have the spiritual abode as well as the spirit of chaos. Half of the spirit of chaos fragments were with the ancient Yu clan while the other half was with the Temple of Shadows. Yi Qingtang couldn't help but admire how thick the Grand Elder's skin was as she listened to him. He really was a sly fox that had lived for tens of thousands of years, to be able to play with someone's heart so easily. Why would I want to work with you? She said with a cold laugh as her gaze swept lightly over him. You're my enemy after all. As long as you're dead, the girl and the spirit of chaos will fall into my hands. The Grand Elder's face darkened as he grabbed little Yu Yun's neck and said, "You're right. I'm no match for you, but I have more than enough strength to kill her. If I die, I'm taking her to the grave with me, and you will lose the spiritual abode." Yi Qingtang looked at him expressionlessly. "Prove your sincerity if you want to work with me." The Grand Elder's heart shook as he quickly said, "Can I use the spirit of chaos fragments to show my sincerity?" He had heard from the ancient Yu clan members that the Crimson League was after the spirit of chaos fragments. If they managed to get the fragments, the Crimson League would not even be a match for them. Chapter 2065, Possession, 3. The ancient Yu clan was most concerned about little Yu Yun's spiritual abode. So long as the spiritual abode remained, the ancient Yu clan could continue strengthening their powers. As for the spirit of chaos, they could do without it for now. A faint smile appeared on Yi Qingtang's lips. "All right. As long as you hand over the remaining spirit of chaos fragments to me, I'll let you off. When I finish rebuilding the spirit of chaos, we can exchange the powers for cultivation." Grand Elder's eyes crinkled into a smile. The suggestion she made was satisfactory. Even if the Temple of Shadows had their hands on the fragments of the spirit of chaos, the Crimson League would never sit back and allow that to happen. Grand Elder was merely redirecting trouble to the Temple of Shadows. The Crimson League's target would then shift from the ancient Yu clan to the Temple of Shadows. Grand Elder thought that his plan was secret and foolproof. Unbeknown to him, Ning Luo, who was in a sword form, was watching him negotiate with Yi Qingtang and was simply at a loss for words. What kind of trauma did the Holy Lord of Shadows cause for him? Why was he this afraid? Even if the Grand Elder was badly injured, Yi Qingtang wouldn't be able to beat him. However, to think he was fooled by Yi Qingtang. "I'll let you know of the whereabouts of the fragments of the spirit of chaos as a form of sincerity," Grand Elder said smilingly. Yi Qingtang raised her brows while listening to the hiding spot of the fragments of the spirit of chaos, but she didn't make a move. "I'm the only one who knows about the location. Not a single person from the ancient Yu clan knows about the spot." "Holy Lord, you are now the second person to know," the Grand Elder said. "I'm supposed to believe you when you just randomly told me this mysterious location. What if you just escape like that?" Yi Qingtang continued. "What do you mean?" "I want the boy behind you." Yi Qingtang raised her hand, pointing at little Luo Shui, who was on the altar. "You seem invested in his body. I have no interest in him. I will need to make sure the fragments are at the location, then I'll let him go." Grand Elder's eyes narrowed and after some thinking, he nodded. He took little Yu Yun to a side and Yi Qingtang put down the Ice Frost Divine Sword before lifting little Luo Shui up. Given that the Holy Lord of Shadows was powerful enough and had no use of little Luo Shui's body, so Grand Elder wasn't worried. As Yi Qingtang looked at little Luo Shui, who had a blank expression while in her arms, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she managed to save one of the two. As for little Yu Yun, Yi Qingtang looked at Grand Elder. He should be prepared for his death. Yi Qingtang wasted no time and took Yu Qiong with her to the location that Grand Elder had told them about. Grand Elders revealed a grim expression only after Yi Qingtang left. There wasn't any problem with the location he had named. However, he wasn't that foolish to just wait for her without doing anything. Even without little Luo Shui, as long as he had the spiritual abode, he could continue cultivating more outstanding vessels. Grand Elder prepared to take little Yu Yun with him to leave via the secret passage. But he had completely neglected the Ice Frost Divine Sword that had been left behind by Yi Qingtang. When Grand Elder took little Yu Yun with him and prepared to leave, the Ice Frost Divine Sword suddenly had an outburst of light. The Grand Elder had sustained injuries, and since the Ice Frost Divine Sword had a similar breath as little Yu Yun, he didn't notice a thing. Only for an instant. The Ice Frost Divine Sword went through the Grand Elder's chest from his back. The Grand Elder's eyes widened as he looked at the sword that was peeking out of his chest. Shock finally registered across his features. How had he fallen so easily into this trap? Chapter 2066, Complete Victory. 1. How could this be? Yu Qingtang had already left. How could the sword even? The Grand Elder spat blood and collapsed on the ground. With that, the Ice Frost Divine Sword transformed, turning into Ning Luo's human form, and he snatched little Yu Yun away. Wasting no time, he flew out of the place at the fastest speed possible. The Grand Elder was powerful, but he had already sustained some injuries, and coupled with the sword's attack, he couldn't help but collapse on the ground. His eyes were filled with hatred. The Holy Lord of Shadows. That was a good move. He hadn't expected the Holy Lord of Shadows to be this powerful. Even her sword had a consciousness of its own. Nevertheless, the Holy Lord of Shadows. The last one standing might now be you. You would never be able to anticipate my last card. Grand Elder, who had once been the one to control the entirety of the central mainland, took his last breath before dying. His body was originally filled with powers from the spiritual abode. Within seconds, he lost the very last remnants of his energy, and his corpse quickly turned into ash and vanished. Ning Luo took little Yu Yun with him and flew away to look for Yu Qingtang. Yu Qingtang realized that the Grand Elder didn't lie. The spirit of chaos fragments were indeed hidden at the spot he named. However, Yu Qingtang wasn't in a rush to take them away. She only relaxed when she saw Ning Luo bring little Yu Yun back. Ning Luo quietly observed Yu Qingtang. He already felt that this young lady was very different from others back in the first mainland, but she had grown so much now. He wouldn't have been capable of coming up with such an idea to save little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui. Until, Yu Qingtang left him behind at the altar and hinted for him to take action. It was only then that he realized she was a sly one. Ning Luo, leave this place with Yu Qiong and the children, Yu Qingtang instructed. What about you, Holy Lord? Yu Qiong asked worriedly. The ancient Yu clan and Crimson League are still fighting outside. How can I miss the fight? Yu Qingtang smiled. Of course, she must join this battle. Without uttering a word, Yu Qiong took Ning Luo and the unconscious children with him, leaving through the secret passage. Yu Qingtang also flew out. Outside the underground world, among the stretch of mountains. The ancient Yu clan, Crimson League and Temple of Shadows were engaged in a fierce battle. Corpses were laying everywhere. The ground was almost completely red from the blood flowing everywhere. Yu Qingtang could see Ming Di in a fierce battle from far away. His murderous self was completely unleashed. The ancient Yu clan was no match for the Crimson League. They were at a disadvantage from the beginning. One of the three elders had died in the battle. The entire ancient Yu clan was almost destroyed. Yu Qingtang flew onto Ming Di's back. Ming Di was about to breathe hot air at her, but when he turned around and saw that it was Yu Qingtang, he was stunned. Continue. Yu Qingtang showed a gentle smile. Ming Di regained his senses, charging towards the ancient Yu clan's army. The ancient Yu clan was already at a disadvantage, and when they saw Yu Qingtang appear on Ming Di's back, they were startled. Retreat. Don't stay here. As long as we have the spiritual abode, we can always make a comeback, an elder ordered once he noticed that things weren't in their favor. Elder Yuan was also prepared. He sent someone to the underground world to inform little Luo Shui to look for the Grand Elder with little Yu Yun. They would not be defeated. Chapter 2067, Complete Victory. 2. The Grand Elder should have received the news and taken the children with him. Since he had yet to return, Elder Yuan and the others guessed that he went to look for help. The ancient Yu clan had sustained great injuries. It was no surprise that the entire ancient Yu clan wanted to retreat and tried to pull out of the battle. When Ming Di saw that they were about to escape, there was no way he would ever grant their wish. He wanted to chase after them, but Yu Qingtang stopped him from doing so. Following the ancient Yu clan's escape, the clans let out raucous cheers of victory. At the same time, Yu Qingtang rode on Ming Di's back to look for me. Before she got off Ming Di's back, she realized a handsome man was standing beside me. The man stood right beside me and didn't have much of an expression on his face. Yu Qingtang was shocked that me wasn't hostile towards the man, and instead, was very welcoming. Who was he? She hadn't seen him before. Yi Qingtang brushed it aside and spoke to me, the ancient Yu clan has been defeated. I'm not sure if they took the fragments of the spirit of chaos. We need to hurry up and go back to the underground world to look for the fragments. Me nodded and discreetly watched the man's reaction. After seeing that the man wasn't interested in the fragments of the spirit of chaos, me didn't say anything more. May I know who this is? Yi Qingtang looked at the man. Me was about to speak up but noticed the man was startled when he saw Yi Qingtang. Me couldn't help but feel suspicious, but nevertheless continued, this is my friend from the second domain. He had some matters to take care of in the first domain so he came by to visit me. Yi Qingtang didn't think too much after hearing Mi's words, but she couldn't help but feel a little curious. The Crimson League seemed indifferent towards humans, but now, Mi had good relations with this human. Moreover, Yi Qingtang could somehow sense that Mi respected this man. Regardless, Yi Qingtang wasn't planning to be involved in the second domain's affairs. She had already brought little 5E Yuyun back. As long as little Yuyun regained consciousness, she would set the first mainland's living creatures free. With that, Yi Qingtang let the Crimson League enter the underground world to search for the fragments of the spirit of chaos so that she could prove her innocence. The Crimson League found many rare treasures that the ancient Yu clan had collected over the years, but they couldn't find even a single piece of the fragments of the spirit of chaos. The ancient Yu clan might have taken it away while they were escaping, but don't worry. They will never be able to escape from this mainland. Yi Qingtang comforted them, but she wasn't surprised at the outcome at all. The Crimson League hadn't discovered the secret passage yet. The Grand Elder was dead and only Ning Luo, Yu Qiong, and herself knew of the whereabouts of the fragments of the spirit of chaos. Ning Luo wasn't interested in them while Yu Qiong had already pledged loyalty to Yi Qingtang. It was impossible for the Crimson League to be able to find the fragments of the spirit of chaos unless Yi Qingtang spoke up. They were victorious and returned in triumph. The Crimson League and the others returned to the Temple of Shadows. Yi Qingtang went to look for Yu Qiong and Ning Luo once she stepped foot into the Temple of Shadows. Ling Yan was also in the room. How are they doing? Yi Qingtang looked at little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui, who both lay on the bed. Little Yu Yun was unconscious while little Luo Shui had a blank expression. Not so good. The ancient Yu clan must have cast a special spell on them and were not able to remove it just like that. We can only try to observe and deal with it gradually, Ning Luo said. Yi Qingtang frowned. At least they were back and thankfully, they still had time. Chapter 2068, Complete Victory, 3, Yu Qiong, don't leave your room for the time being. There will be trouble if the Crimson League sees you, Yi Qingtang told him. The injuries on his face had already more or less healed and he would be recognized by me and the others in an instant if he went out. Yu Qiong nodded. With Ning Luo protecting them, she could rest assured for little Yu Yun and little Luo as well. She headed back to her room and called Ling Yan in. The little white tiger, who had been left abandoned in the room, quickly jumped up as it saw Yi Qingtang. But when it crawled back to where it was after seeing Ling Yan behind her. Damn him. He was here again. Miss Yi, you look like you have something to tell me. Ling Yan asked her with a smile. That's right. The Crimson League wasn't able to find the spirit of chaos fragments with the ancient Yu clan this time. Do you know anything about that? She asked. Ling Yan nodded as he looked at her with eyes full of laughter. Miss Yi must have found what the Crimson League didn't manage to find. Yi Qingtang was speechless. It wasn't fun at all talking to such a smart person. Miss Yi, you don't want to hand over the spirit of chaos fragments so quickly since you're afraid that the Crimson League will leave once they have obtained all the fragments and recast the spirit of chaos. There would be a terrible battle if the ancient Yu clan were to regain their strength. Ling Yan pointed out all the calculations that she had made. In response, she shrugged and said, "You're right. Since the ancient Yu clan hasn't completely been eradicated, I will make use of the Crimson League." At this stage she had yet to decide whether she wanted to hand over the fragments, but seeing the way things were going, she was only going to hand the fragments over after the ancient Yu clan was completely wiped out. When that time came, she would hand over the fragments to the Crimson League and they would leave, which meant she could finally heave a sigh of relief. After discussing with Yi Qingtang about a few other things, Ling Yan left. But he didn't return straight to his room, he went to Ning Luo's room first. As Yu Qiong stayed next door, only Ning Luo and the two children were in the room. Ning Luo wasn't surprised at all to see Ling Yan but prepared himself. "Why did you need to come and see me? Haven't I already kept my promise to you?" Ling Yan smiled as his eyes moved to little Yu Yun, who was on the bed. Ning Luo's gaze remained guarded. "I've already told you all that you want to know," but, he froze as he saw Ling Yan's gaze turn complicated. "Ling Yan, what exactly do you want? I've noticed ever since we were in the first mainland that you've always been helping her, but your actions now are making me suspicious. Why do you need me for this? Just what is it you are planning?" Ling Yan smiled slightly as he lowered his eyes. "When have my intentions ever changed? Since I've already fulfilled your wish for you, you don't need to worry about the rest." A bark of cold laughter erupted from Ning Luo. "If not for my master, I would never have worked with someone like you." Ling Yan shrugged slightly, not bothered at all by his remarks. They exchanged a few other words in a low voice before Ling Yan turned to leave. Ning Luo suddenly spoke up as they reached the door. "Ling Yan." "Yes?" Ning Luo fell back into silence. Regardless, Ling Yan seemed to know what he wanted to say but chose not to reply. He pushed open the door and left. Chapter 2069, Strange, 1. Yi Qingtang was still thinking of ways to wake little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui but nothing was working. According to Ning Luo, the only way to break them out of the ancient Yu clan's control was to kill the one controlling them, Elder Yuan. But he had escaped after the previous battle. At this moment she had no idea where to find the ancient Yu clan after they had escaped. The only way to completely eradicate them was to borrow the Crimson League's power. Originally she had planned to use the Spirit of Chaos fragments as an excuse when talking to me, but there were some things that she had to smooth out first. In the past few days, Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo had both been by little Yu Yun's side. The little white tiger had followed her to do so as well but noticed that her gaze had become strange over the past few days. "Have you realized that your cultivation level has been increasing rapidly?" Yi Qingtang was speechless. How had she not noticed? Ever since returning from the underground world, her power had been growing rapidly. Perhaps. Was this all due to little Yu Yun's spiritual abode? The more she understood the power of the spiritual abode, the more she was sure that if little Yu Yun's identity was exposed, it would create a lot of trouble. Even the Crimson League may take action. Because of this, she could only hide little Yu Yun. Even the Temple of Shadows didn't know that she had brought back two children. In the short span of a few days, Yi Qingtang's cultivation level had risen by a few levels and she had reached the 7th Holy Venerate level. She was extremely happy with the rise in her power. She sensed that the reason she could absorb the power so quickly without the fear of combusting was due to the deity ocean within her. Every time little Yu Yun's spiritual abode pumped power into her body, the deity ocean would release a wave of power as well, integrating the power into her body. With her current power, there was no one more powerful than her in the central mainland save for those youths who had received power from the spiritual abode and ate the flesh of the demon cubs. After a few days of strategizing, Yi Qingtang prepared to talk to me about her plan to eradicate the ancient Yu clan. But just as she entered the main hall, she saw a long shadow stretched out in front of her. In front of her was the mysterious boy who had appeared beside me the other day. He seemed to have followed the Crimson League to the Temple of Shadows. Although she had tried probing me a few times about his identity, me had never revealed anything about him, which made her all the more curious. She looked at him and nodded slightly, preparing to leave, but as they brushed past each other, he suddenly raised his hands to stop her. "Do you need me for something?" She stopped in her tracks and looked at him. His gaze swept past her face, as though he was thinking of something. It would have been impossible for her not to sense something strange in his gaze. "I wonder if the Holy Lord is free today?" he asked flatly. "I've heard great things about you and I hope you can give me some advice." Yi Qingtang was speechless. What was going on? Chapter 2070, Strange, 2. Yi Qingtang looked at the man in front of her in bewilderment. He wanted to challenge her. Yi Qingtang was speechless. She didn't even know who he was. This was their first time interacting. And their first proper introduction. Was it going to be a challenge? Yi Qingtang simply couldn't comprehend what was going on in his head. Since you're Ms. Friend, you're a guest at the Temple of Shadows. I don't have any reason to fight with you. Yi Qingtang replied coldly. What kind of joke was this? Judging from how me treated him the previous time, she could already tell that he was a force to be reckoned with. Even Yi Qingtang couldn't tell what level he was at with her current powers. He must be much more powerful than her. Though Yi Qingtang had remarkable improvements recently, she wasn't daring enough to fight with a strong power from the second domain. The man was slightly dissatisfied when faced with her rejection, and it showed in how he knitted his brows. Yi Qingtang didn't want to continue entertaining him. Wasn't this too strange? Who on earth would approach someone for a challenge as an introduction? Wasting no time, she moved to leave, but just as she stepped forward, she felt a gust of chilly air from behind. It was overbearing, even more so than Yi Qingtang was alarmed. Whoosh! She instantly dodged. Right when Yi Qingtang flew up, a beam of light flashed past the spot she originally stood at and pierced through the wall in the Temple of Shadows. Boom! A huge crack appeared in the wall. Yi Qingtang was speechless. The walls in the Temple of Shadows were built with special materials. It would take at least 3 days of continuous bombing by tens of holy venerates to cause a crack in the wall. This man did that with a single move. Being shocked was an understatement. Holy Lord, please don't be humble. This is a rare opportunity, why won't you just take up the challenge? The man was devoid of emotion, and the moment he said that, he struck another move towards Yi Qingtang. This speed was inhuman. He was so quick that Yi Qingtang couldn't see anything. Yi Qingtang couldn't even keep track of his shadow. She suddenly felt a twinge in her shoulder and flew away from the impact, spitting a mouthful of blood. He was so powerful. Even more powerful than anyone she had ever met. Yi Qingtang could only suffer and broke out into a cold sweat. It seemed like he wasn't going to make any further move. He merely looked at Yi Qingtang with his brows furrowed and with a complicated expression. Yi Qingtang was stunned. She had improved, but she was nowhere as good as the real Holy Lord of Shadows. This man could tell. Yi Qingtang couldn't help but feel uneasy when she recalled that the man was friends with me. Before Yi Qingtang could do anything, the man left without a word. After stepping out of the temple, he simply vanished. Like that, Yi Qingtang was left behind, feeling confused. This man. What did he want? He wanted to challenge her but just left after striking one move. Were strong beings from the second domain all strange like that? Although she had no idea what his motive was, she could not allow herself to let her guard down. Cleaning up after the impromptu confrontation, she went to look for me. Chapter 2071, Strange, 3. Me had no idea about what had just happened. He thought that it was weird when Yi Qingtang told him that the man had left, but did not say anything else. Yi Qingtang heaved a sigh of relief when she saw his reaction. It seemed as though he had really left without saying anything to me. She could vaguely tell from his words that he wasn't from the Crimson League and was from another force. Although she wanted to ask him for more information, me seemed to have no intention of saying more. I always get the feeling that he's very strange, and that his powers are greater than me, she said as she sat on a chair looking at Ling Yan. Who do you think would win between Ming Di and me? Ling Yan asked as he looked at her. Ming Di is probably still slightly stronger, she said after mentally comparing the both of them. Ms. Power was astonishing while Ming Dis was overwhelming. Between the two of them, Ming Di still won by a little. Legend has said that Ming Di could fight with the Holy Lord of Shadows as equals, Ling Yan said. Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. With that man's strength, even if he couldn't defeat the Holy Lord of Shadows, he wouldn't be far off. Did he just want to test her power? I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint him then, she said with a shrug. She was probably considered one of the strongest in the first domain right now but was nothing in the second domain. Ling Yan laughed lightly and said, Miss Yi, you should stop worrying since he's already left. In my opinion, he's not going to tell this to the Crimson League. Perhaps he doesn't even have them in his considerations. I'm not worried that he'll inform the Crimson League. I can tell that even though me and he know each other, they're not that close and there's no point in talking about me either. It's just that. I sensed something strange in his gaze towards me, her lips twisted softly, not understanding the man's actions. Miss Yi, you don't have to worry about all of this. Shouldn't you think about how to deal with the ancient Yu clan? Ling Yan suddenly changed the topic. Yi Qingtang looked at him, sensing a different meaning behind his words. The ancient clan? Ling Yan nodded. You've already gotten little Yu Yun back, which means that they would have found out about the loss of the spiritual abode already. Their plans to recast the spirit of chaos have also been dashed. They've suffered huge losses, which means that they will be seeking their revenge soon. The ambition of the ancient Yu clan extended beyond the first domain and the strongest chip they had was little Yu Yun, who could generate countless powerful youths. For them, getting the spirit of chaos would only add to their power. Even if they couldn't obtain it, it would only stop them temporarily. But losing little Yu Yun was a huge blow to them. They had lost many powerful youths in the previous battle. They wouldn't be able to make more powerful members without the spiritual abode. The reality was as Ling Yan had said. The ancient Yu clan had lost the previous battle and retreated to their last stronghold. Not only had they lost the entire underground world, but they had also lost a clan elder that was extremely important to them. At that moment, the ancient Yu clan elders were gathered at the main hall. The clan master who just entered the main hall had a dark expression as he stared down at them. I only left for a while. Look at how badly all of you handled this, he spat out with narrowed eyes. Chapter 2072, Counter, 1. All of the elder had grim expressions as well. Any news of the Grand Elder? The clan master asked coldly. As the clan elders looked at each other, their expressions, if possible, became even more solemn. Clan master, the Grand Elder was no longer there when we went to the old palace, one of them said. Not here. What do you mean? The clan master's expression was cold. Clan master, we entered the secret passage after the Crimson League left but found signs that there were already people there. The Buddha statues guarding the place had all been destroyed as well and it seemed that the Grand Elder had already been killed. Ridiculous. The clan master instantly smashed the head of the elder who spoke up. Fresh blood splattered all over his head. The whole hall fell silent. Where is the girl? He asked coldly. No one dared to reply to him in his anger, afraid that they would be the next victim. But their silence gave him his answer. Great, great, great. He burst out in laughter and shouted out 3 words. I guess both the Temple of Shadows and the Crimson League really do want to destroy us. The clan master's face was completely frosty now. The clan elders had ruined their plans of collecting all the spirit of chaos fragments but now, even little Yu Yun had been taken away. This had destroyed all their plans. Clan master, should we recuperate first, then wait for the Crimson League to leave? Another person suggested. As it stood, they were no match for the Crimson League now since their power was way beyond their league. And with the loss of little Yu Yun, they were in deep trouble. They had no choice but to wait for the Crimson League to leave. Recuperate? The clan master let out another bark of cold laughter and continued, the ancient Yu clan has been planning this for years. How did they ruin our plans? Clan master, you mean? The clan master took a deep breath and closed his eyes gently. Where do you think I have been all this time? No one knew what he meant. I went to the second domain. Everyone froze at these words. The clan master had gone to the second domain. The Temple of Shadows borrowed power from the second domain to ruin our plans, so why can't I do the same? The clan master looked at all of them. We are not the only ones who want the spirit of chaos. Many forces in the second domain want it as well. The Crimson League is from the second domain, but there are many forces like them as well. We can't possibly let the Temple of Shadows go so easily now that they've ruined our plans for the Spirit of Chaos, no? The clan master said as his lips curved up into a cold smile. There was no way he was going to let them have what he couldn't obtain. I've discussed with the forces of the second domain. As long as they help us clear our enemies in the central mainland, I will give them the Spirit of Chaos fragments after we win. Although he had still been hesitating about making this decision, the loss of little Yu Yun was the last straw. He wanted the Temple of Shadows and the Crimson League to pay in blood for what they had done. The ancient Yu clan members who had been worrying all looked happier as they heard this. Clan Master, if we can borrow the might of the second domain, the Crimson League is nothing that we would fear. They only sent over a few people. As long as we can get more help, we don't have to fear the Crimson League or the Temple of Shadows. Chapter 2073, Counter, 2, Elder Yuan. The clan master lifted his eyes to look at Elder Yuan, who was standing silently to one side. Yes, he said. Those two kids are under your control. Can you tell where they are? The clan master asked. He had to get little Yu Yun. The Spirit of Chaos could be let go of, but the spiritual abode couldn't belong to anyone else. I can vaguely sense that they're in the direction of the Temple of Shadows, but he'll need to get closer to narrow down the actual location. The clan master nodded slightly. Alright, well, attack the Temple of Shadows directly. You'll be in charge of finding the children after that. He paused for a moment before continuing, Elder Yuan, you had better not disappoint me this time. A bead of cold sweat ran down Elder Yuan's forehead as he nodded. The Temple of Shadows and the Central Mainland had sent more people to the Central Mainland to look for the ancient Yu clan. But it was as though they had vanished from the entire mainland. There was no trace of them at all. Yi Qingtang continued to keep the information about the Spirit of Chaos to herself, which only made the Crimson League search for the ancient Yu clan even more frantically. From what I can see, the ancient Yu clan are already too scared to even show their face, so Holy Lord, you don't have to be too worried. The 8 tribe leaders were gathered in the main hall. They didn't think that the ancient Yu clan could cause any more trouble. As long as the Crimson League was still on the central mainland, the ancient Yu clan wouldn't show their faces. The 8 tribe leaders were more worried about rejoining the Crimson League. Holy Lord, since we've already rejoined the Crimson League, should we consider returning to the second domain after all of this is over? The demon tribe leader said eagerly. The 8 tribe leaders' strength was based on the amount of faith people had in them. When they were in the second domain, their powers made them have a huge following, which made them even stronger. But the faith they received had faded when they went to the first domain. The Temple of Shadows had been strong in the central mainland and they had received a lot of faith, which had sustained their power. But with the disappearance of the Holy Lord of Shadows and the desolation of the Temple of Shadows, they had lost much of their power and were now not even 1/10 of their previous strength. In their heyday when they were still in the second domain, just one stomp of their foot would be enough to make the first domain shake 3 times. How far they had fallen. Yi Qingtang knew their intentions well and had several thoughts about going to the second domain as well. She had found some hints of her mother's identity in the mystic realm and knew that she was from the second domain. The only way she could find out more about her was to go there. Just as she was about to speak her mind, a sudden pain bloomed in her chest. The pain seared through her bones and brain and was so painful it felt as though her lungs and heart were being ripped apart. It was so bad that her vision turned black and she almost fell off the black bone throne. Fortunately, it only lasted for a little while. She swayed for a moment but stabilized herself almost immediately. Chapter 2074, The Disintegrating Seal, 1. The 8 tribe leaders had not noticed anything wrong with Yi Qingtang and were still encouraging her to return to the second domain. It was Ming Wang beside her who noticed her pale face. Brows furrowing, he looked at the chattering 8 tribe leaders and said coldly, the Holy Lord has her own plans. This issue with the ancient Yu clan is more important right now. If you have nothing else to say, please leave. The 8 tribe leaders were speechless. This little rascal. How dare he make use of the Holy Lord's affections towards him? But they knew they couldn't be too hasty or risk Yi Qingtang's dissatisfaction, so they left. Ming Wang waited for all of them to leave before turning to her. Holy Lord, you should take a rest first. His expression was unchanged by the worry in his eyes, revealing his true thoughts. The pain in her chest was constant and unbearable, but in order not to let Ming Wang know, she could only keep a straight face and drag herself back into her room. Ming Wang frowned as he looked at her retreating figure. What was wrong with Yao? Why, had he sensed a dangerous aura on her just now? Yi Qingtang forced herself back into her room before collapsing on her bed. The pain was getting more apparent and cold sweat broke out on her forehead. The little white tiger, which was sleeping soundly at the side, was startled awake by her sudden movements. It rubbed its half-open eyes with its paws and was about to mutter something when it noticed her collapsed on the bed, pale and covered in a cold sweat as she clutched her chest. The little white tiger jumped up in an instant. Damn, what's happening to you? She had been fine when she left just now, so what was happening? It was still puzzling over her condition when it sensed an aura that it hadn't sensed for a long time on her. This was... The little white tiger jumped onto her and looked at her chest with its eyes narrowed. The divine phoenix seal was weakening. Damn it, there had been so many things happening recently that it had completely forgotten that there was such a dangerous thing on her. Yi Qingtang could feel the pain seeping into her heart and bones as her consciousness gradually faded. Mother! Mother, do you not want me anymore, Mother? A soft, familiar voice filled her ears as she faded in and out of consciousness. She soon completely blacked out. The little white tiger narrowed its eyes as it looked at the dangerous aura surrounding her. The door suddenly opened just as he was worrying about what to do. Ling Yan rushed straight to her. As he saw the black fog surrounding her body, his gentle eyes turned sharp. He suddenly opened his karmic natal chart, summoned a strange force, and forced it into her body. The black fog around her dissipated in an instant and the pain on her face cleared. You, the little white tiger looked at him strangely. The divine phoenix seal won't be able to suppress it much longer. He looked at the sleeping Yi Qingtang and lifted his hand to wipe the sweat off her face. The little azure dragon's eyes were complicated as it looked at the situation unfolding in front of him. Ling Yan, how many lives did you think you have, to do something like this?